Oh, goodness. It's doing the live stream thing. This is why we're trying to migrate away from Facebook. It is a wonderful organization for so many reasons, but oh, we're actually streaming right now. Okay. Well, wouldn't you know? It told me that it was not. Okay. Wonderful. We'll go ahead and get started then, as long as the live stream continues working well. Silly, silly. Okay, welcome folks in our cute little Zoom room here, and also following along online through Facebook Live. My name is Aslan. I am a curator of this Poets in Pajamas program brought to you by Sundress Publications. And today and tonight, depending on what time zone you're in, we have a wonderful reading to bring to you from Ting and Evelyn Berry. Because of the time zone differences, we'll actually be conducting today's reading a little differently than ordinary. Usually we have both readings back to back and then a Q&A at the end. This time we're going to do Ting's reading first, followed by a Q&A, because currently Ting is at work. So we will go ahead and get started right now. And if I can find all of my pages, I'll introduce Ting, a Singaporean Chinese writer. She is a 2021 Writability Fellow with Writers Victoria, a member of Kenyon Review's Winter Workshop 2023, and a participant of Tin House 24. She is a 2021 and 22 Pushcart and Best of the Net nominee with work published and forthcoming in Prairie Schooner, Pleiades, Gulf Coast, Colorado Review, Salt Hill, OSU, The Journal, and elsewhere. She is a winner of the Emma Howell Rising Poet Prize 2023 with her debut full-length collection, The Miracle of the Setting Sun, forthcoming with Willow Springs Books / Washington State University Press. Her debut chapbook, Bodies of Separation, is published with Cathexis Northwest Press, and second chapbook, The Long-Lasting Grief of Foxes, is published with Mouthfeel Press. She tweets at Sher TTT and writes at sherting.com. Ting, whenever you're ready.
Hi everyone. So I'm Sher Ting. So currently I'll be reading a few poems. The first of which is it's actually the first of which is not exactly from my chapbooks. It's a new poem. The rest of which will be from my upcoming full-length collection. Yeah. Okay. So that language you're trying to learn when you are 60 and sitting at the table with your newfound friends, wondering when you stopped trying to ask for sauce. But you were a hui yi, intention, and also yi, meaning. Because how often have we disarticulated what we intended? The way we phoneticized from psychomatic arch, maxillary, and tongue. The breath pining for another pocket of wailing space. To try again. To hear your incisors tear through another root like a broken canal. The myth is the phone that rings as fast as the person that wishes it. The cow that returns to the field that has been stripped. I think we have learned to separate the bird from the stone, the cord from its flowering stem. The moon licks the wounds off the alphabet cards by an abandoned sewing kit. The television sings of the local news broadcast like it is the latest Chinese opera. Someday your daughter will learn to pronounce etymology faster than you can. Then she'll learn to pronounce happiness and wonder why that didn't come first. Etymology, because a word remains truest to its meaning when unspoken. Analogia is split by syllable, pathos, and teeth. I think of dust that circles the aerial beams, sun spokes, and cable lines only to land in another space. Sand that softens into another shape once the horse has galloped its parts. Nothing is as prone to misconception as black holes and a trope. To swim and come up with nothing but air. Yue Ai, Shui Niu, Ye Liu, have you submerged of yourself so far till you've seen the stars? When in orbit of pressurized breaths, stutter of fragmented mandible, they drift horizontal like a bridge of magpies to the place where you have been known. when you could have said all you have been dying to mean. All right, so the following poems will be from my forthcoming debut poetry collection titled, the new title for it will be Burn Before Dawn. Yeah, so it's basically a reflection of the experiences of my country during the Japanese occupation. All right, so the next poem, Songs of War. Tonight I dream of a land without fruits, evergreen mosses sprouting from the soil in a mouthful of dark, listening to the heartbeat of a city, Daku across the shadows. In native Hokkien, my grandma's mouth blooms with songs of violence, a ravine emptied of its light. I write 爱国主义, and she really tells me it's written 爱国主义. How the language, just like the war, has been tarnished by colonial rule. The diphthong curling like a language buried, a monument of scattered teeth. She tells me to sing to that vision in time when we existed among nothing, a hymn of crowded hopes and cloudless skies, the soliloquy of cicadas among which the foot soldier crouches, the eulogium a single coil of diesel threading through the canal's ridge. Even then, we changed to nothing, young soldiers maimed in an uneven battle to arrive at the bones of an island, a garden of enfiladed fire shaken by the sun. An exhalation of light pushed through scores of cannonballs and cords of bitter bravery through rustling palms and southern winds. Our dead lie peeled like sheens of molars scattered across the hill. Tomorrow they will march through the streets with their prisoners of war, Ganka drafting across radio waves. Tonight, my grandmother stopped singing songs of violence. The last anthem, From the Throat to Alveolar Ridge, resting with the foot soldiers on Opium Hill. Okay, my next poem, Cho, the man with 9 lives remembers every one of them. When the city had fallen to its knees, he huddled in the bomb shelter, the last embers disappearing fireflies into the February heat. Akong's face was darkened by smoke from a stump of cinder the Sunbu soldiers had tried to cleave. To live, he became small as a prayer. How silent the chapel when they announced the war. The way he'd run into the rain parched from a house beleaguered in ash. The way he'd hang long-lipped prayers on trees to invoke another sound that could outlast the fire. The way the crickets stopped singing when his home hung from skeletal flowers. They called us insects, but they didn't know. Insects lived forever, and we were made to stay. At the height of rain, he followed their language into the midnight sun and thought when it was over, he'd leave. Many years later, Akong would throw a fist on the table when my auntie says she's taking language classes at the Japanese school. He still repulses at the thought of sake and hikes through Tanglin Road to avoid their flag. Zhong, the mouth caught between two oceans, the realization that the war has never left, the daughter's heart untouched by last generation's heresy, as 4 years of carnations burst into bloom to rest on time, its body built on bones. Okay, and the next poem, We Always Speak the Language of Colonizers. Hinomaru, what's mine is yours. All this earth and the blood raised on it. Kimigayo, how language became a man with a trigger. And when I spoke about grief, there was another warm body to pull from the dead. When we pronounced kako, the past, we took only the letters from the occupation. The O to mark the point of separation, the object removed from its place. I was a set of particles forced into dissimilar syntax, orbiting a gravitas of moras, wondering if hate was a language or if we had written a language into hate. The classrooms etched with tunting, but we'd long stopped calling things what they are. The old tonalities effaced as an escarpment in the dark. I speak little in the columbariums of formal lovers, the jarring pain that germinates from anything, even the absence of song. The warring echo, a diminishing cry, till the walls have smothered its voice. I write about Bushido, how the Japanese word for Ting, silence, sounds too much like Ting, clean. When the plains have drowned the screams of the birds, I write Misogi, watching the rain beat a city out of its eye. I know only of how we have bled from one defeat to the next. Silence, the only violence that is immortal. And I'm only terrified of the unknown, like a hand reaching from the dark, not knowing what it'll find next. Okay, and my next poem is Light of the South. With your thumb on my jugular, learning the crest of my breath, you told me you were made for destruction, but tonight, we will build cities from the bones you've made. Tell me, brown-eyed lover, architect of the bright and blazing Hinode, how you mouth through and break the womb of another country to satisfy your desire. In a townhouse, midnight on a dime, your grandfather once reached for the arms of another woman and called it mercy. When she broke, all river, seed, and bloody thread, he christened her indecent. Years later, he'd sit at the bar, dusting gun cotton out of his hair, laughing about the one encounter he had with the mysterious woman from a land he once denounced. Carnhill, Pulau Bukom, the names of the comfort stations sound like a solid myth. Rain forests backwards through the open eye of the gable, through battered cubicles and whitewashed tribunals, to has renounced an ancestral wound. The dead lie, moon-orphaned and unmarked in their graves. You press a thumbprint into my back, some victim of causality, to mark the hour I learned about all the other legends our grandmothers foretold. So then, what does it mean to be saved? I've had faith in heroes lesser than you. Okay, my next poem, Riverside Medley. And Pa, I would have told you about the truck, candy, melons, and dragon beard, but the truck has circled the city twice and returned with armored men. And I have told you about the forest, the casuariness flecked with starlight, but the stars are burning and the forest has chipped its flint. And I would have told you about the miracle at the back of the mama shop, when my sister brought life into a world that had forgotten about living, and my mother found 2 straight pennies pressed into the ground where no one had walked in years, and the lady with feather boas and sailor's dream was back in the cabaret doing small town numbers at midnight. You once said, if you looked long enough at the stars, you'd be looking into eternity. And I asked you, in this eternity, could you be any more alive? What does it mean to live forever once we've cast our lots? In another eternity, you're on the roof, tending to your tapioca plants. The television talks less of internment camps than of the weather. Sometimes on the military report, there's a crackle and pop of spring, static on the radio, and it just keeps going. And sometimes I like to think it's you, messing with the transmission. How sad it would be to live forever, when everything is just too early, too late, and our existence is a fulcrum of white noise. And my next poem is Inheritance. And the willows kissed his feet. See how we begin this story in the middle. Like, and he took out a bottle of alcohol, threw the parang across the room. Like, and so they danced with fists, and the light was soft like her belly. Some pills were easier to swallow in halves. When I said my grandfather lost a limb, we'd say, oh yes, what a terrible thing. Then a soldier carved it off of him. When he drank, it was because he was a troubled man, not because of the scar, kosher incision above the waist. I was living, running through the lalang, listening to the rush of thunderclouds and mud wiping this topsoil from its decay, saying, this is the hammered drywall, the bag of bones, the car with a broken windshield. I do not begin with the birth, the childhood, the broken locks with soldiers in our home, but a man broken and gutted, standing in the middle of the road, a river of blood beneath his feet. Because no one cares where the river begins, but only where it ends. Tell me, soldier, though you've hated them so, survival is a reckoning in itself. I say I'm the grandchild of two grandparents born and bred on an island. What I really mean is, you don't know how much I'm coming from. All right, and the last poem I'm reading is called Autopsy of Exit Wounds. All through morning and night, the shots ran up the walls. Dust settled over the gramophone, over the gnarly figures reclined against the futon, illuminated by the single bulb of a rudimentary lamp. The thump of bodies on the ceiling, bodies so blackened you'd only recognize them by their hands. Are you scared? My sister whispers. Mostly. Then I'm mournful, aggrieved, the words we've only ever learned to speak in a foreign tongue. 2. The light goes out and I ignite it. Off and on, repeat it over and over again ad nauseum. The breeze breaks through the shattered window, a draft of smoke crawling across our knees. The guttural rumble of the armored truck plows the alleyways like the beginnings of a monsoon. Do you think a candle knows it's going before it's gone? My sister asked, her sinewy hands clutching a pad of ration cards as the gale howls between us. Maybe. But then it remembers its body, the wax and the wind that has conspired to keep it alive. The streets were a convo for crime, as the Japanese soldier bludgeons the man, over and over till he bows over, shaken to its knees. His blood runs through the cracks in the pavement, crystallizing in the split lip of a longkang. The next day, his head's on a bamboo pole outside the Kempeitai headquarters, while his mother stands outside their home, burning Jaws paper, eyes glassy as the skies, watching vermilion tongues flicker into rhymes and fasten to the bones of trees. Between the there and now, the words of a prayer drift rootless beneath a canopy of ansana, the silk shifting beneath an estate of skin. Are you tired? Are you hungry? My sister asked, more statements than questions. What if we don't make it out? Or what if we do? What if we can't live with ourselves after this? Or worse, what if we can? My sister doesn't ask about the neighbor's son, what has become of him, as she breaks the camphor and slips beneath the table, bottle in hand. There, we listen to the splay of boots on the asphalt, the thunderclap of a rifle against the night air, imagining neon showers on New Year's Eve, and in the glow of a fire, we watch an elderly couple dancing into the dark. When bones are broken, a callus forms over them. It's a miracle what the body does to survive. The bones that have filled with water, even when the flood has broken their will to live. When the waters have receded, I watch an ocean form in the spine of the river, thinking how love and death are a form of violence. And to have loved its metaphor, I must have died in a different kind of life. Okay, thank you.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Sher Ting. It's so lovely. And it's so good to have you back on again. For those unfamiliar, Sher Ting is one of our all-stars who returned from last season as well. To get right into the Q&A, I have two opening questions that Gardner and I like to ask. The first being maybe not even poetry related. What has been obsessing you recently? What has been inspiring you in the world, in media? What is something that has really been bringing you joy and something that inspires you to write?
Okay, I think recently I've been inspired by the whole idea of memory and nostalgia. So, so a part of that was, I'm not so much, so the memory part was actually exploring my grandparents' memories, exploring the memories of my country, and that's why I formulated this collection. The second of which, now moving on from the collection itself, I was preoccupied with memory and nostalgia in relation to old films, like Wong Kar-wai's film history. Yes, so I was actually I was just watching them and just reflecting on how much they've captured in terms of the mood and perspective of the country within that period of time. In addition to like love, memory, nostalgia, all of that. So I was just writing poems inspired by that, and yeah, and just moving forth from that. Just a lot of what I'm writing about right now just comes from the movies and even like indie films that I've been watching from A24 as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And Chungking Express and In the Mood for Love are two of my all-time favorite movies. Wong Kar-wai is one of the greatest ever. Also, just a little side, I learned recently that he famously his budgets for his movies are like 1,000, well, US dollars is what we would say, but I mean, no money. I mean, he just has a camera and he just walks around and films his stars. So inspiring for independent art. The other question I wanted to ask you, which is Gardner's favorite question to ask, is when it comes to you first beginning a poem, an idea, what medium do you use to explore that? Do you pencil and write it on paper? Do you type it out? Do you use your phone to note it out? How do you first start expressing the idea? And then when it comes time to finalize it, does it shift at all? Or do you have like any preferred way of writing your stuff down?
So usually I formulate my ideas on a notepad in my phone. So whenever I'm walking on the streets or just going about my day-to-day activities, if an idea comes to mind, I'll just jot it down. Any good lines, I'll jot it down as well. And then from there, I just start building on the poem. Like usually I tend to do a lot of my writing on like public transportation or when I'm just like waiting around, in a waiting area for certain things to get done. Yeah, so I find that those times my mind's the clearest. I'm not really thinking of doing anything else. So I just tend to write a lot during those times. And then with those lines that I formulated, I'll usually transfer them. I mean, I'll just craft like a rough draft of a poem on the phone, and then I'll transfer it to my computer. But once I start typing it out, somehow, I mean, because you're reading it through your head as well. So the lines just tend to shift. You'll find that some things sound better, some things don't work out as well. So you start deleting lines, you start re-editing those lines that you've written. And then it formulates into this poem on my computer. And then usually I'm not really satisfied with those poems. So I'll just keep going back and re-editing them. And I don't think I've ever reached a point where I'm actually happy with the poem. So even now, like even these poems in my collection, I'm still working through them. I'm still re-editing. Yeah. And usually it just keeps going up to the point where you are like, okay, I have to get it published now. And yeah, this is the final draft, which I'm the most happy with. Yeah.
So true, so true. I don't think that a single time, and I'm sure everyone else following along who writes also feels the same. The poem is never done. It's just at a certain point you just say, okay, go on. Um, I have one more question for you so that you can get out of here on time. So much of your work deals with language using uh, Mandarin characters and Latin characters, and also with your connection with Singapore. As I understand it, I've never been to Singapore, but I do know that there are so many languages represented there between Tamil and Malay and Singaporean Mandarin and also Chinese Mandarin. Um, and English being also such a prevalent language in Singapore too. Um, I'm curious when it comes to your artistic process, how language plays into your beginning with writing, whether you think it out in English or whether you start with, I think your native tongue of Chinese, is that correct? A Mandarin?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because also in so many of your poems, you will shift between like, my grandmother says this, and you'll actually put in. So I'm just curious how during your writing process, as you explore your archival history, as you explore language and the history that has occurred within your family lineage, how language plays into that.
So usually I start off my writing process in English itself. So I'm thinking, okay, I have this idea for a poem in English, and I start writing that. But somewhere along the way, I think, I mean, I guess a lot of language, I mean, when I'm speaking to my grandparents of that, it tends to come in as well. Like you are jolted by this particular memory from the past, from your mostly from my childhood, my past experiences, and the things that my family has said, my grandparents have said, and somehow that just weaves its way in. And sometimes my incorporation of language is a bit more intentional because I like to explore the idea of how English and this how there shouldn't be any like clear boundaries between language, how the meanings in English can flow into Chinese and vice versa. So the poems I write, sometimes, the English itself, I feel like the Chinese actually adds on another layer of meaning because that same word, for example, like when we're talking about memory, like 回忆, 忆 itself, when you say it in Chinese, it can mean because when it's part of 回忆, it means memory, but when you say 忆 on its own, it means intention, what you're intending to do. So I feel there's this duality of meaning, especially for these words itself, which and so I'm very fascinated about wordplay, and that's why I like to incorporate that into my poems. And sometimes, I feel like it adds on this meaning which otherwise, which otherwise wouldn't. I mean, if you're just reading the line on its own, it doesn't quite delve as deep into the meaning of the poems, and especially when I'm writing about, because a lot of my experiences, I mean, I was overseas in Australia for a few years as well, so I'm always dealing with two languages, like bilingualism. So a lot of what I'm writing also stems from that, the experience of how it's like living overseas, in a different culture, coming from a different background, coming from different languages as well, and then how I can deal with that. And that comes through a lot in my writing, and that's why I like to incorporate the Chinese as well. Yeah.
I think that's so beautiful. And especially, I mean, I don't think it's the job at all of multilingual poets to educate people who do not speak a language, but it is a beautiful opportunity. Like every time I've read one of your works that has characters that I'm not familiar with, I get to look it up and learn. And something so beautiful about all of the languages spoken in China is just how old they are relative to other languages, how much rich history there is, and how so many words have so many different connotations to them. And of course, the very same could be said of English. I mean, just depending on where you speak it, the way that an Australian person would speak English and the way that someone from my native Tennessee would speak English, completely different with different ways of understanding words. So I think all of that is so beautiful, trying to blur together the different memories, the different ways that words carry meaning. So stunning. Your work is so stunning. Thank you so, so much for gracing us with your reading. Please feel free to get back to work or leave whenever you want. We will roll right along now, though, to Evelyn Berry's reading.
Oh, hey, Aslan. I think you've been muted for a hot second. You're okay. Thank you, Sher
Oh
Ting.
my goodness. Did my send off to Sher Ting, was that muted too?
No, it was as soon as, yeah. I think
Oh,
you.
okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Evelyn. Amazing. So now we'll reintroduce. We're going to reset the air. I do love technology and Zoom. Thank
Yeah.
you, technology. So we'll move right along to Evelyn's reading. Am I still here? Am I
Mhm.
still good? Great. Evelyn Berry is a trans Southern writer, editor, and educator. She's the author of Grief Slut, Sundress Publications 2024, and Buggery, Bateau Press 2020, winner of the BOOM Chapbook Prize. She's a recipient of the 2023 National Endowment for the Arts Poetry Fellowship, 2022 Dr. Linda Veldheer Memorial Prize, 2019 Broad River Prize for Prose, and 2018 Emrys Poetry Prize, among other honors. Her work has appeared in Beloit Poetry Journal, South Carolina Review, Gigantic Sequins, Raleigh Review, Taco Bell Quarterly, one of my favorites, and elsewhere. She lives in Columbia, South Carolina. Evelyn, take it away.
Hello, I'm here for a sleepover with all of you. I brought some stuffed friends, like a pink, I have many cows, and I have the hungry caterpillar, very hungry caterpillar, and also some Pokemon. So yeah, hello, I'm Evelyn Berry. It's so good to be here. I'm gonna read a poem from my book. So this book, Grief Slut, came out earlier this year. And I'm going to read one of my favorite poems, Queer Ecology. Don't be surprised. I'm a redneck wussy. Moonshine sloppy with a limp wrist. Town crier, sobbing on the street corner. You'll get used to the lipstick, same like the Scupidine's flesh sweet pulp. I'm here, sure as roadkill, sure as, oh, possum, night slick slurping blood ticks. I'm everywhere like a dandelion falling apart in the wind's embrace. I'm haunting the family tree. Born to this ecology, this bloodied patch of dirt. Go ahead. Spit me roadside like a boiled peanut shell sucked of salt. Crown me queen of the chitlin strut. Don't be surprised, the ground's so fertile. Young queer's been fucking in the field since the first sin, first garden delight, first Adam's apple taken in the mouth, first seed spilled. If you bury enough wild queers in the dirt, one's sure to sprout in your backyard. Thank y'all. I'm going to do something a little different today. If you've never been to any reading, then don't worry about it. But I'm going to read a bunch of new poems because, yeah, I just kind of want to. I'm excited about them and haven't had the opportunity to read a bunch of stuff that I've been writing in the past couple months. And I thought that might be fun. And I wanted to read Queer Ecology because I feel like it kind of sets the tone for a lot of these poems. Like I feel like I'm speaking back to some of the same themes in Grief Slut, but I've kind of matured a little bit, and I think that the themes have matured. So the next poem is called Self-Portrait as South Carolina Peach. We spent summer nights at the drive-in, necking in truck beds, mosquitoes blood smacking on our bare thighs. We came home late, bite marked. The first time I bruised, I admired skin turning dark like a fruit. Once I puked a bottle of pills into the toilet, fled class and collapsed on tiled floor. Once a girl offered to brighten my blood. She pressed her lips to flesh. I was still soft enough to ruin. The pollution started young, high on anything I could pilfer from medicine cabinets. Frost plundered the peach orchards that year I lost to the kick of brief bliss. How did I live like this? The memory's decadence decayed. I just wanted to feel present, like how as a child I'd eat peaches in the backyard, nectar grown from the same dirt as me. I grew up in South Carolina, and if you're not from here, then you might not know that we have the most peaches in the country, the best peaches in the country, despite the fact that we're next to Georgia that calls itself the peach state. That's also 3 times as big as us, but we have more peaches. So that's a fun South Carolina fact for you. This next poem, most of the poems I'm going to read today are sonnets, because I've been in my little sonnet era, including this one. It's called In Praise of Being Fat. Who names this sin to love my fat body? Let me praise where I've been, this lived in skin. My belly sings a ballad of ripening, an abundant garden, gorgon gorgeous. If I must be myth monstrous, I'll sharpen my teeth. I'll rewrite the story myself. I'm transsexual Orpheus of smut, orifice with an oral fixation. Fill my mouth with grease, chocolate, feast of chubby thighs, thick calves, spit and cum and sweat. I'll regret nothing. Not red dress excess, not afternoon sex in a king-sized bed. My loves, their bodies like mine intertwined. We are laughing and fat and hot as fuck. I should mention I'm like literally in bed right now. Yeah, because it's some fun slumber party energy up in here. With my little lamps on. And also, I apologize in advance if I get Sundress Publication banned on Facebook for my lewdness. Sorry, Aaron and everyone else. Whoops. But I just have a lot of poems that are horny. This one's called Discipline. When you swing swift, open palm to pinken my upturned ass, I brace for the soft sting. I take a sharp breath, then the ache stills me. Your hands remind me to whom I belong. You grasp my long hair, pull taut to tame me, snare a whimper until I gasp your name. Give me this reverie. Animal urged to break free, break me, I beg, please don't stop. I lose count and collapse, still obedient in your embrace. You caress where you've bruised, where you've used skin to mark me your canvas. You coax me back from the brink of spent sense. Call me good girl, your leather leashed darling. I promise I'll be a good girl this time. I brought Evie as well, my emotional support Evie. She is giant. I've been writing a lot about fruit, and one of my favorite fruits is strawberries. So I thought it would be fitting to write a poem about a strawberry. So this is called Self-Portrait a Strawberry. So I'm fruit, I'm a strawberry, I'm a peach, whatever. Self-portrait as a strawberry. How long have I waited to be swallowed? I was not fated to rot on the vine. Suck me until you're sated. Taste my juice. My body, a plump, sugar-ruined fruit. Pick me ripe, flushed with wild, bursting delight, ruby lush as blush-burned cheeks. Crush me red, blood-suckled, blessed, sucker. Eat me alive. Let me be sweet. Spread me on bread. Preserve the tart of seed-pulped flesh between your teeth. What survives, you must feed back to the earth. Spit me, bury me, tamp the damp dirt flat. Let me return, revived Frangaria. Let me be strawberry bruised on your tongue. It is in your mouth I come to become. This one is like probably like the spiritual successor to Queer Ecology. And it's called Country Queers. And the reason I wrote it is because I wanted to use the word frottoir, which is like one of those like washboards that people play. As I was talking, I had a brunch with my ex-boyfriend who's like a banjo player, and I was learning about old-time banjo music. Anyways, country queers. In the tick-riddled fields beyond the creek, where we skip stones, trade spit and nostalgia, we make of our queer bodies a concert. Cricket choir fiddling their legs at dusk. Bullfrogs from the bog join in, all caught up in backwoods cacophony. Cicadas sing like a fouettoir. Washboard, steel scraps, scrape, guitar, twang tune to match our crooked mouths. I've known this home since before I was grown. I'm leaving, but not until tomorrow. Here, we are moon luminous and constant as night's sharp appetite for music. We shed our dead names like rattlesnake skin. We pretend our freckles honeysuckle. This next poem, it's kind of hard to get unless you can see it, but it's what's called a contrapunctal. And basically the way a contrapunctal works is that there are like, in this case, 2 columns, sometimes multiple columns, and you can read it every which way. But usually when I read it, I'll read it both columns and then both together just to get a sense of it. It is based on a painting called Mars Black, which is in my local art museum. But I called it Self-Portrait as Nothing. So it's partially inspired by Mars Black. It's partially inspired by a book called Reverse Cowgirl by Mackenzie Wark, which is a very interesting memoir. So anyways, here's the poem. It's also a sonnet. So it's also, iambic pentameter up in this bitch as a contrapunctal because I try to make things too hard on myself. Before I was named close to a real man, I performed my lack. Black hole, blank spot, gone. Not light of dead stars. Tampered crime scene of obscured memory. Gendered antiquity. Forgotten trinket. I pretend to sparkle, abandoned glitter. Search for me back then. Woman I was not, easily definable, like a numb throat, splatter ink, blot, splotch, in the space between this empty body, post-obsolete sex in pre-op junk shops, mistaken ornate in lieu of gewgaws for shades of the dark. You'll find me missing. Before I was named woman, I was not close to a real man. Easily definable. I performed my lack like a numb throat. Black hole, blank spot, gone, splatter, ink blot, splotch, not light of dead stars in the space between tampered crime scene of this emptied body. Obscured memory, post-obsolete sex. Gendered antiquity in pre-op junk shops, forgotten trinket, mistaken ornate. I pretend sparkle in lieu of gewgaws, abandoned glitter for shades of the dark. Search for me back then. You'll find me missing. Okay, I have 2 more poems to share. The next one is, these are not sonnets. I don't think they are. But this one's called Transsexual Confessional. And I wrote it just because I like using the word transsexual, and I've been like really just putting in a lot of poems because it's a fun word to say. Transsexual confession. And plus those words kind of rhyme, so I thought that was fun. That's it. Sometimes you just have to do things because you're like, that's fun. I forget my own monstrosity until someone reminds me. They'll rubberneck my funeral to Sherlock my birth sex. You get used to it, the staring, when starring in your own 24/7 sitcom, the too loud whisper, the obvious gesture, the prying question. I could try to play along, the usable suspect, moonlight as hermaphrodite hermit haunting the wet dreams of legislators. Could tell them the names my lover calls me, what they write on my body in impermanent ink. And my mother balks at the body slick songs I whistle true as a god with. could deliver the rehearsed plea, a past drafted for palatable consumption, but I won't give them that. Won't tell how panic fangs my brain, freeze calligraphed with tragic stories of how uncertainty, then shame beget death. I know how a girl like me becomes a cautionary tale. We recite to help each other survive. No, I won't flaunt the wound to prove I'm alive. Last poem. This is a poem that was recently back in May, really before then, but it was the world premiere in May. It was translated into an operatic art song and performed with some opera singers. So this is called Arietta for Trans Femmes. And it is a arietta, which is like an aria, basically, a solo. I love your voice. Love your bright noise, your hands. I rejoice in your perfect mascara. Glory your regret, that familiar wound, a harmony we keep out of habit. Love your brittle, love your battle weary. Love your fury, sister, your gnashing heart. Love your kiss, tipsy, laugh, snort. Love you here, love you safe. Love you more than everything. Sister, we sing our ordinary ache. Don't mistake flowers for funeral wreaths. Let us breathe a little longer. Stay here. Make me tender as a lipstick-stained ear. Let us resist the gilded casket's grasp. We will let go of the past, dear sister. May the stories of how we've lived outlast every elegy born from our mourning. Let us pray against storms. Another year we'll spend not leaving each other behind. We find our way back to ourselves instead. Let them learn our names before we are dead. Love your name. Love the way you say it slow, like a word you invented, language forged for your mouth. Love your mouth. Did I tell you? Tomorrow, let me hear your voice again. And that's it.
Oh my gosh, Evelyn, thank you so much. It was stunning. That was absolutely stunning. I'm very curious too about it being translated into opera form. Is that available to be seen online?
Not yet. It might be eventually. So they did a recording, which I've seen, but we can't release it publicly for reasons. But the composer, whose name is Laura Jobin Acosta, I think is planning to probably do other things for it. I know I've chatted with some doing like some edits and stuff, since this is like still the premiere, so it still might change a little bit. And then I think they might also be trying to like write it too, so different like trans performers can do it, because it is like a soprano alto piece, which is really hard to do. But yeah, we'll see. I know it was kind of funny when I did this, because then I feel like I heard from every trans woman opera singer in the world who was like, hello. And I was like, oh, okay. You'll have to ask the composer. I just wrote the words.
Yeah, no, amazing. And certainly I feel like folks can also look up their work and find it as well, or at least what is currently out, and then also follow along for if it ever does get a release.
Yeah, she's really cool. I loved working with her. Yeah, she's I think based out of New York. I think, man, one of those cities. I think New York.
Yeah.
She's cool. Yeah, it was really cool. And the opera singer who debuted it was named Lindsay Metzger, who was an amazing singer, with a guy named Isaac Hayes on the piano as well, who was like this just incredible pianist, who does just incredible shows. So it was really lovely to be able to perform with them and do something. I love doing anything collaborative.
Yeah, that's so beautiful to also see when page meets stage, quite literally. That is such a special opportunity.
I'm a big
I,
fan.
I would love to ask you also the introductory questions that I asked Sher Ting, of course, beginning with separate maybe from your literary explorations, what has been obsessing you recently as to promote you to want to write or has been inspiring your work?
I've gotten really into crosswords lately, I guess. And I feel like they're a little like brain exercises for me. So I don't know. That's what I'm doing. I do, and I'm like, I need to like be smart at work for my job. But I'm feeling so tired. So crosswords are the thing that I'm like, okay, let me like re-engage. It also is like very similar for me poetry because I'm very concerned with sound and rhythm and like meter. So I feel like crosswords are a similar way that it's like you're working with words, but it also feels like a little math equation. Sorry, I'm like squirming on this bed because I'm trying to sit in a comfortable position.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just shout out crossword in general. The perfect exercise. Look, I mean, you can wordle all day long. That's cool.
Yeah.
But you are never confronted with your own limits than when you actually sit down with a full crossword puzzle and realize, oh my God.
It was really fun. I feel like I've really ignored it my whole life. And then I feel like me and my partner turned 30 and suddenly crosswords, we're out here. Who knows? We're going to bed at 8 p.m. and you know, doing crosswords.
Amazing. And then also, um, when you begin your drafting process, what is the medium with which you usually begin, and then how does that transition towards the quote unquote finalization of a piece?
Yeah, for me, a lot of things, like I'm sure for a lot of writers, there are little like phrases that get saved in notebooks. But when I'm actually writing, like I feel like I do writing exercises a lot. It's like one of the reasons I've been doing a lot of forum poems. I it's not like homework because it's I find it fun, but I treat it like homework almost of like I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna like write a poem. So like at this point right now, I'm like working towards a second manuscript and probably writing like a poem every other day, like just a new draft of something, even if it's not gonna get like turned into anything. And generally I will just create a list of constraints. So that's usually where I'm writing from. And then I will use the notebook, like with all the kind of inspiration to kind of have a jumping point. So like a lot of the poems that I read today, it was like, I know that like saw that the country queers one, like I knew I had a line about crickets and I was like, okay, let me write like a, very musical sonnet using that line or using a variation of that line. Or sometimes it's just an image, I'm like, I've been I just had like a list of words that were related to strawberries, and that's where the strawberry poem came from. And I was like, oh, I want to use the word Frangaria. That's a lot of that. It's a lot of words where I'm just like, that's a cool word. What's a word that's like a near rhyme with that? Okay, I could use that and that. So it's a lot of like play with language. And then I feel like from sound, meaning kind of evolves, if that makes sense. And like the revision process is mysterious even to me because usually it's like either it's going to be like coming out in one whole lump when I do like a really strict form, or it's something I do and then I'm kind of disappointed in, and then I don't look at it for 2 years, and then I'm like, oh yeah, let me rewrite this poem. Which like I'm kind of in that process right now where I'm like taking stuff I wrote like years ago and like just figuring it out because like it's just never worked, but I still like the ideas. I just want to mess with them more.
Absolutely. And that also kind of just immediately answered my next question about the relationship between form and content, hearing how you bounce between words that would sound good together, thinking about meter and rhyme, because so much of your work has these just glorious, quick, successive internal rhymes and moments of assonance and consonance, which I think makes it just so immediately iconic when you hear one of your poems. And it's also amazing. Maybe I have a sweet little copy of Grief Slut right here. Hearing you read them out loud so immediately resonates with the way that it appears on the page. I think that's so special. I think so rarely is someone able to really pen down the musicality of the spoken voice, but it's obvious that you have this attention to performance and this appreciation for just how the words come out of the mouth, how they feel in the mouth as you say them. And we're about to run out of time, so I wanted to get to one more question if it's good. And it's actually, you read one of my favorite poems of yours, Queer Ecology, and that really, Sweet Caterpillar, really brought to top of mind the relationship to queerness and ecology, and also Appalachia in general, and just the North American South. And thinking about all of the artists that have come before who have done amazing work trying to bring to the front stage how that correlation exists, this kind of trinity of sorts between the ecology of the land and queerness and identity. And so I was very curious if you had, and this is just a very open-ended question, so if nothing immediately comes to mind, absolutely, but if you could meditate a little bit on the relationship to you between Appalachia or just the North American South in general, and queerness and ecology, how those things kind of interrelate.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I will say I'm not from Appalachia in particular. I'm like an hour south of what would be considered the South Carolina part of that. I'm familiar with it, but I did grow up in a very rural space, kind of like, it's the sort of thing where I lived in a small town, but not even in a small town. I lived like outside of city limits of a small town, and the thing I guess that comes to mind is that I started thinking about ecology a couple of years ago because I worked in archives. So I worked in this like new, now not defunct, but not no longer producing materials nuclear site. That also had its own like ecology lab and really interesting history. And I was thinking a lot about like ecology because I was constantly talking about ecology. And I was thinking about the idea of ecology as like a study of home. Like, what does it mean to think about what home is, and particularly like what home is for queer people? And for me, like, you know, um, it is so hard because like I will talk about South Carolina and people seem to I think people who don't live in the South always assume that your number one ambition in life is to leave the South. Because they're like, you must hate it there. And I'm like, I mean, there's things I don't like, but it's also like my home. And like, I think that a lot of my work, I want to claim spaces as a place where I belong. So it's a lot about like making a stake in a space to kind of like claim belonging. And I realize like a lot of groups do that as well in the South because the South is a place where a lot of people are made to feel not welcome. And so sometimes that means like reconfiguring certain symbols of the South to make them gayer. I feel like with Grief Slut, I already did the thing that every queer Southern poet does, which is rewrite Bible stories so that it's about having sex. And I'm starting to move on from that just a little bit. But now what else kind of can I explore as well?
I think that's beautiful, and there are what would really the word Appalachia snuck in there, even though I really meant South, because of forerunners in this lane like the Queer Appalachia Project or Electric Dirt, who
Mhm.
have been doing their part trying to claim southernness and queerness as always having been this thing, and now going to really present as this thing that is
Yeah.
prolific and beautiful. And it also kind of reminds me of the work of Ross Gay in kind of a tangential way, where Ross has been, as I've heard through lectures and readings, um, claiming queerness as being that of joy, right? Being, I mean, I think he announces being like the poet of queer joy, which absolutely, but the ability to also kind of translate that into claiming the South. Like I hear that too in all the time when I tell people that I'm from the South. It's like, oh my God, how have you survived? It's like, well, it's home. So that's how it happens. You make it happen. And I think your work speaks to that so beautifully and so robustly. We are officially out of time. Thank you so much for your amazing reading, Evelyn. And thank you everyone online on Facebook for tuning in, and anyone who will see this as a recording thereafter. You are loved and appreciated. We will be back in a couple weeks for our August readings, with our two readings being that of Irene Vasquez and Gail Maureen Thompson, and then later on a wonderful reading by Jim Whiteside on the 25th, I believe, and Diesel Carson. So we would love to see you then here at this time, 7 p.m. EST, both on Sundays. That'll be the 11th and the 25th. So yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a blessed night, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.